for nearly 2 decades. So how do you put in perspective just what Kobe meant to Los Angeles?
Man, Los Angeles got to know Kobe when he was a boy coming into this league. I mean, he and I are about a year apart. I grew up here, and he was in high school coming into the NBA. I remember when he took Brandy, the pop star, to the prom, and we got to know him as a young man. We got to see him grow into an all-star, an MVP, a champion, and then we got to see him age as an old man. And the last couple of years, we've got to see him as a father, as somebody who had a whole second career coming to him that he was just as passionate about. And I think, I was driving around the city, you see all these memorials. I drove out to the Mamba Academy in Thousand Oaks, and there were just hundreds of Laker fans there. There were young teenage girls who played on Gianna's team who were there, and nobody was saying a word. I mean, right behind me, I'm outside of Staples Center. There's a whole vigil outside. There's fans outside who've been out here all night just waiting to go in there and stand next to that vigil and pay tribute to the man. And there's just I think the word that comes to my mind right now when I'm describing what it feels like in the city of Los Angeles is empty. I mean, he was a legend. He was larger than life, and he's gone.
I want to take this next conversation in 2 parts for you, because obviously this is also very personal, considering the amount of time you spent with him.
Yeah.
What will you remember most about him off the court?
It's just that will, right? Like, he had this indomitable will that the basketball memory I'll always remember is after he tears his Achilles, he goes and shoots those 2 free throws like nothing happened, right? You know how much pain he was in, but he just went and shot those free throws. The last night of his career, I remember I was texting him all day long, and I was, like, are you nostalgic yet? Are you going to cry? And he was just cool as a cucumber. He was like, nah, man, just another game. And then he went out and dropped 60 points. And it was one of the most incredible experiences that any of us who were there that night will ever live through, because it felt like the most audacious way of going out as a basketball player. And he drops the mic and says, Mamba out. And I remember calling him it must have been 4 in the morning. We were texting all night. I don't know if he slept. I definitely didn't. I had written a big, long story about him. And I said, man, you just made me tear up my whole story and do it again, because I thought you were just okay going out, like as Kobe Bryant, the old guy on a bad team. And look what you just did your last game. And he goes, yeah, good. I'm glad you're tearing it up. And there was no way he was going out any other way but as a legend. And I think that's what's so incredible to me is, as a reporter covering him, I don't think that we'll ever cover anybody like him again. But just as a person, in the last couple of years, we got to be friends. He would send me texts about his family and ask about my son. He cared. He always knew what to say. And there's so many people around the country, around the world, who he reached out to and just said exactly what you needed to hear in that moment, because that's what he was living for at that point. Legacy, teaching the world, teaching the kids and the next generation. And that's ultimately now what we have to remember him by.
It's interesting that you said we got to see him as an old man. I wish we did get to see him as an old man. Kobe Bryant was 41. Thank you, Ramona.
We have Adrian Wojnarowski with us this morning on SportsCenter AM, and after a day in your career, I'm sure you're never going to forget here. What do you make of the reaction that we've seen around the league since the news?
Yeah, Kobe was, truly a global star, and he sort of took that mantle from Michael Jordan, and really became maybe the first post-Jordan star in China. What the impact he had on his peers, on a younger generation of players, he transcended the NBA, he transcended the Lakers. He played for the most popular team in the sport for 20 years, won 5 championships, and had a persona that people, it's what they wanted out of their sports star, which was he wanted to beat everybody. He didn't want to buddy around, team up with other guys. He took great pride that he won his 5 championships in LA, and he would tell me, I didn't have to leave and take a pay cut to do it somewhere else. I didn't have to team up with anybody. Yeah. They came to me. We were able to do it together.
Because of his accomplishments and the championships and the fact that he did transcend the sport and was a global name, how does all of that play into the legacy he now leaves behind?
You know, I think for anybody who wears that Laker uniform, I think, you know, LeBron James and Anthony Davis now playing for the Lakers, like, you are measured by one thing in LA, that's championships. And, you know, Kobe always wanted to be, he wanted to remain in that conversation with Michael Jordan among who the best ever were. And I know for Kobe, having those 5 titles, and there were other guys in the conversation who had fewer than him, he took great pride in it, that you had to catch him at the 5. He was trying to catch Jordan at 6. And, you know, Bill Russell for him at 11, he was one of his great mentors. He loved Bill Russell. Even though he was a Laker, Russell was a Celtic. You know, he always talked about taking a lot of his mentality from Russell as they got to know each other and sometimes through the years.
Yeah, their phone calls, he talked about it as he introduced Russell at the ESPYs a couple of years ago. Adrian Wojnarowski, we appreciate that.
Truly stop you where you stand when you attempt to process news that doesn't compute and still doesn't. Welcome to SportsCenter. I'm Scott Van Pelt. Sunday was one of those days. Kobe Bryant has died in a helicopter crash at the age of 41. There were 9 people lost to the crash, including Bryant's 13-year-old daughter, Gianna. Throughout this hour, reactions from around the sports world to this stunning news. The crash occurred in foggy conditions Sunday morning in the hills above Calabasas, California, just north of Los Angeles. Flight records indicate the Sikorsky S-76B helicopter was approximately 40 minutes into its flight when the crash occurred. Los Angeles County Sheriff Alex Villanueva said 9 people were on board the helicopter, which burst into flames when it crashed. Reactions begin with the man to whom Bryant was so often compared, Michael Jordan. He said in a statement, "I'm in shock over the tragic news of Kobe's and Gianna's passing. Words can't describe the pain I am feeling. I love Kobe. He was like a little brother to me. We used to talk often, and I will miss those conversations very much. He was a fierce competitor, one of the greats of the game, and a creative force. Kobe was also an amazing dad who loved his family deeply and took great pride in his daughter's love for the game of basketball. Yvette joins me in sending my deepest condolences to Vanessa, the Lakers organization, and basketball fans around the world." Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe's teammate for 8 seasons, 3 titles, took to Instagram for the following statement: "There are no words to express the pain I'm going through now with this tragic and sad moment of losing my niece Gigi, my friend, my brother, my partner in winning championships, my dude and my homie. I love you, and you will be missed. My condolences goes out to the Bryant family and the families of the other passengers on board. I'm sick right now." Phil Jackson was Kobe's head coach for 11 seasons in Los Angeles, released the following statement: "The crash was a tragedy for multiple families. My heart goes out to Vanessa and the families that lost loved ones. Kobe was a chosen one, special in many ways to many people. Our relationship as coach-player transcended the norm. He went beyond the veil." Of course, last night in Philadelphia, LeBron James passed Kobe Bryant on the all-time scoring list, moving up to 3rd. Bryant's father was a 76er for a number of years. Kobe grew up playing in the Philly suburbs, so the moment felt more cosmically appropriate than in a random city with no ties. Kobe Bryant taking to Twitter just last night, tweeting out, "Continuing to move the game forward at King James. Much respect, my brother." After the loss last night in Philly, the Lakers arrived back in California Sunday morning. An emotional scene, as you might imagine. James wiping away tears and sharing a long embrace on the tarmac as he left the plane. Around the day in the NBA, players trying to figure out what to do. There was talk that maybe games wouldn't be played. You see Jamal Murray finding out pregame. Rockets and Nuggets, a moment of silence prior to the game.
A tragedy has befallen the world of basketball. Earlier today, at the age of 41, Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash. The NBA and the game of basketball will mourn this loss together. Please join us in a moment of silence for Kobe Bryant. Rest in peace, Mamba.
Austin Rivers, emotion palpable, Tyson Chandler as well. Meanwhile, in the Raptors-Spurs game, this was what began really the trend of the day, moving. 24-second violations for both teams. Assistant Becky Hammond and Tim Duncan in tears on the Spurs bench. The Pelicans and Celtics game, they would remember Bryant and daughter Gianna. Pelicans, a moment of silence, which was 24.8 seconds, honoring both those jersey numbers. And those numbers were seen on the sneakers of many of the players, their own personal remembrances. And at the start of that game, taking the lead from the Spurs and the Raptors from earlier in the day,